You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm George Cedarquist, joined this week by Oliver Camacho and Weston Williams. All right, in this episode, we go inside the huddle with composer Justine Chen, whose The Life and Deaths of Alan Turing, with a libretto by David Simpatico, gets its world premiere next week, right here in Chicago. And then Apple Music takes a bite out of the classical market. Plus, the 2-minute drill. The BBC is rolling out its irreversible, catastrophically damaging plans for classical music. Otherwise, things are okay. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Stitcher and Spotify. Click follow. Hey, Apple Podcasts. Saw what I did there. Hit the plus sign. Send us that voice memo. Email us your hot takes. operaboxscore@gmail.com. You're going to get the OBS beer coaster. You're going to get the OBS lapel pin. One of these days, I'm going to make those stickers. I swear to God, Oliver, I'm going to do it. Did you watch the Oscars, young man?
I did. And it was very emotional. Ki Hui Kwan and Michelle Yeoh winning for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Both of them made me cry. I thought the Daniels were always so, just what they said was so sincere and like thanking their teachers and thanking their families. And it was like the first time in a while I felt like people who gave speeches were sincerely happy to have won. And, you know, we've had these winners in the recent past, who it's like, it was, of course they were going to win. And right. There's like, they take the opportunity to do like something political or to like say, you know, for some other, they use the speech as a platform for something else, which is
right.
Fine, because you knew you were going to win. You prepared that. But it's nice to actually see people happy. And I thought that the movie, Everything Everywhere at Once, I never thought it would be an Oscar candidate, really, because it's so specific and it's so weird. There's like butt plugs in it. It's like about it's about the Asian experience, like having an Asian parent, which is like a real specific thing. I think some people can relate to it, but there's some highly specific things to being first generation Asian American in that movie that I was surprised were universal in the end.
What a great recommendation. As usual, I've seen none of the movies at the Oscars. This was the first year that my children actually took an interest in the Oscars. And they actually watched, some before bedtime, I think, so they could talk to their friends at school the next day. I did see Jamie Lee Curtis's acceptance speech, which was lovely. And when they all sang happy birthday to one of the members on the team. Weston, did you watch the Oscars?
I did, and as a matter of fact, when I was watching specifically for Everything Everywhere All at Once, when they were shouting out their teachers, I recognized a couple of the names and then found out that one of the director-writers actually went to my high school about 6 years before I did, and that was a real trip. So basically, I need to get working on a screenplay because I'm behind, guys. Let me tell you.
Well, you can't do it while we're taping. Let's talk some opera.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
Justine Chen and David Simpatico's The Life and Deaths of Alan Turing is an evening-length opera inspired by the life of the groundbreaking computer scientist Alan Turing. It was commissioned by American Lyric Theatre in 2012 to commemorate the Turing Centennial. It was part of the New Works Showcase at Opera America in 2017, and it was workshopped right here at Chicago Opera Theatre in 2019. It returns to Chicago Opera Theatre in its world premiere production later this month. We are thrilled to talk to Justine Chen, but before we do, let's listen to a little bit of her music. This is from her song cycle, New York Scenes. We're going to hear bass Matt Baylor and pianist Edward Laurel. Music by Justine Chen.
Barkeep, thank you. Smile, sip, smile, wink. What was that? What a look. Still quite cute. And with another try, smile. What did I see?
Just a little bit of Justine Chen's New York Scenes. We heard the internal monologue drinking song performed by Matt Bowler and pianist Edward Laurel. And we don't, unfortunately, have a recording of the life and deaths of Alan Turing because it hasn't been really performed yet, the real thing. And I think that we will have a recording someday because it is already, from what I understand, such a special piece. I saw the workshop and I loved it. And we're going to get the full-on world premiere later on this month, The Life and Deaths of Alan Turing, with the libretto by David Simpatico and composed by Justine Chen, who's our guest on Opera Box Score. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Weston Williams and I both went to the workshop, and we were equally moved by it. I was moved, I think, mainly because of the subject matter, but also by the music. And Weston is our resident new music guy, and he was really into the sound of the show. Before we begin talking about the sound of the show, can you tell us a little bit about how you, as an Asian woman, relate to the subject matter, which is about math and discrimination?
Yeah, well, originally when David Simpatico and I were talking about this opera, he is a proud gay man, and he has a dear husband for many years, and he really wanted to bring Alan Turing, the hero, to the forefront of our cultural mindset. When we first started it in 2012, the Benedict Cumberbatch movie hadn't come out yet, so his name was unfamiliar to anyone who wasn't a mathematician or computer scientist. But whenever I talk to a computer scientist or a mathematician, oh, Alan Turing, they go on and on about him. So we knew about his brilliance and saving the war and his code breaking skills. And then we also knew that he was convicted of gross indecency, which is the crime of homosexuality. And it was always David's point to bring forward the injustice of it all. And I agreed that it was terribly unjust, but I also thought that what was most interesting about this story for me was, number one, the discrimination, which is something that is rarely a subject of an opera, but it's something difficult to display, to put on display, but also something that I really wanted to try out myself. And then also, the other thing that was important to me was that his society was trying to help him. They really thought what they were doing was the best thing. And I did not want to
by chemically castrating him?
Yeah, well, by saying, okay, we're going to cure you. They really thought it was, there were people, they weren't doing it because they were trying to be evil. They thought it was the right thing. And I think that it was, I don't think it was the right thing, but I think people don't try to do the wrong thing, generally. And I think that is the thing that I wanted to depict, that people really thought they were doing the right thing. I think it's really an interesting dynamic, because otherwise it's hard. I think they're such easy targets. Of course, we're so smart, we know that it was wrong, but I think they didn't think it was wrong, and so that's why they did it.
Well, I think you're being generous. I mean, we're having we're having similar issues right now with transgenderism is the word that they're using,
Right.
and people thinking that we need to just make it impossible for people to get gender affirming care because it's what's best for them,
Right.
But anyway, moving on. So we know now that the topic is about this brilliant mind who possibly was on the autism spectrum, who was an out homosexual, who was chemically castrated, but was also a war hero. He was all these things. He was the father of modern computing. With all of that in mind, and also there's a love story, which is a heartbreaking story. I mean, I remember sitting in this workshop performance, and we have this duet that I think is just a fine piece of music. It really, it went right to the heart. So there's this aspect of this of your opera. Where do you begin? Do you begin with the characters? Do you begin with your Justine Chen sound world? Do you begin with text? Like, what is the process?
For for opera, I always start with the libretto. I always start with being sure that I understand the characters and that I understand their motivations, that I know who they are, and that I know where they are and where they're heading. I think those are all really important for me to gather together. Then I can start kind of figuring out the perspective that I'm bringing. So who, when you're listening to an opera, you're listening to someone's opinion of whatever is happening, right?
Yeah.
And you're getting the emotional reaction of whoever the composer decides you're going to get the emotional reaction from. So I think it's zeroing in on the mood and the environment that is being set up. So David Simpatico actually has these amazing, amazing stage settings. For the first, so I've written several libretti on my own. I've worked with other librettists. He's the only one who puts in tons of rain. I feel like there's lots of weather in his operas, but I never considered before, but that's kind of his brain. And so that is really interesting for me to depict. Again, it's like something that usually I have something in kind of an enclosed space. It's not outdoors, but he has this wild imagination, is putting, there's no limit for him. And so a lot of it is just getting the characters, getting the dynamics and getting the dramatic impetus, and then figuring out what the best way is to depict, that.
Yeah. I asked the question because, obviously one does start with the words. But, we're living in this time now where there isn't really a signature sound of our time. Like there's so many different ways of writing operas. Like if you were to ask the same question to composers in the 19th century, it's like, well, it's bel canto. So you start with a melody, try to graft some words onto this melody.
Well, something else that's interesting is, with David's brilliant libretto, there are moments that kind of just reach out to me that say, set me, and I want to figure out the best way to make those things happen. So the chorus moments, I think a lot of those were just really exciting for me to to figure out this chat room sound, and to know how to depict that kind of information and sound world.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's something I want to talk about for the audience to anticipate. You have composed for The Crossing, which is maybe the most technically skillful, or at least musically skillful choir in the US. So I don't know if you are assuming that all choirs can sing.
Well, so I'll tell you, the first time I ever heard The Crossing, I was performing with them. I'm a violinist, and it was a James Dillon piece called 9 Rivers, which is a 3-night extravaganza. I was performing with ICE, International Contemporary Ensemble, and it was maybe the U.S. premiere of this piece. It was such an unwieldy piece. I was one of 6 violinists, and then The Crossing was part of maybe the 3rd evening of performances, and the sounds they were making, I was like, wow, this is so great. And so that was the first time I heard them. That was the first time I had met Donald. And I remember approaching and trying to make a connection. And I think, in the end, I felt like I didn't make a connection with him. But then years later, I realized that hearing them, that was the inspiration of my chorus writing. I think that their technical brilliance, but also, there's something that was really phenomenal about Donald, because he was our chorus master. It turned out in 2019 in that reading, that was everything
at Chicago Opera Theater. Yeah.
At Chicago Opera Theater. Everything had come full circle. Lydia was like, oh, I have a chance of, possibly getting a really great chorus master. And I found out it was Donald Nelly. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so great. And the first time we heard the chorus, I was like, oh my gosh, I turned on my phone and I started recording, because I was like, it'll never sound this good again. I just couldn't imagine. It blew my mind. I still listen to it because it still just sends chills up my.
Just out of curiosity, Do we have offstage chorus, or are they on stage?
They're on stage, yeah.
So they have to be memorized.
Well, I don't know if I'm supposed to tell you.
Okay, that's okay. I'll let it be a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I was told later. I was told later that choruses are not traditionally supposed to do work outside of rehearsals, and I don't know if that's union rules in New York or if that's everywhere. But this chorus is quite difficult, and so they're not going to be off book for most of it. But there are parts that they will be off books, like you remember the Wren's Crypts, like the Andrews Sisters stuff, or like the Schoolboy stuff. That's going to be staged, but yeah.
But the stuff that's like computer sounds,
computery sounds, yeah, that's not, yeah. But yeah, what I realized also, because I just had that sound in my head, is that Donald Nally is a whiz at understanding the style that I'm going for. So this is something that you brought up too, about the compositional style being so varied now, right? And so actually the opera has lots of different kind of musical styles in it. And he always kind of knew exactly the style I was heading for with whatever I was doing. And the very first time I heard it, right, I was so excited, and I played it for a friend, Matt Bowler, actually. And he said, "Oh, you found a chorus that doesn't do vibrato." I was like, "Oh, that's it. That's it. That's a thing that I'm not a singer though.
No.
So I think I'm less attentive to those things, but I'm like, I don't know what's wrong. I'm not sure what's wrong. Yeah. But yeah, he figured out, and then everything, the style, he always figured out the style of it, how things are supposed to move. And that's the brilliance of it.
Well, you've sort of already touched on my next question for you, is how this work has evolved from its commission by American Lyric Theater and its presentation. I guess it would be a concert at Opera America in 2017.
2017.
And then the 2019 COT workshop, and to where we are now. I mean, you don't have to give me the whole thing. Obviously, I'm sure it's a lot, but like, what are some of the broad strokes about what has happened to the piece and what you've learned?
So this has been a long process. We started in 2012. American Lyric Theater remarkably mentored us these last 10 years through multiple piano vocal workshops, and then, partnered with COT for the orchestral workshop. What we were working on, so there's no story that we're mimicking. It's not based on a play, it's not based on a book, it's just straight from David's brain, David's wild imagination. And so we spent a lot of time kind of making sure that everything that was important to the scene, each scene, we have seven discrete memories from Alan's life, plays out in the most efficient way possible, and has the least amount of complications, so the audience can follow what's happening, especially because there is no actual play that we're following. There are a lot of very, very complicated scenes, like the scene at Bletchley Park, which is where Alan worked with his code breakers to break the Enigma machine code, which is a German
cryptology.
The German cryptology,
crypto codes,
crypto codes, but they worked round the clock to receive messages and decode the Nazi messages to find out where.
Encrypted messaging machine.
Exactly.
Encryptor. Yeah, that's where my understanding of math and computers ends.
Yeah, and then the ending is a little bit complicated too, and so we just wanted to make sure the shapes of the scenes made sense going from. And the shapes, and then the dynamics between the characters were clear and made sense and moved forward and dramatically, so that the shape of the opera feels it's kind of balloons, towards the end even. Yeah. So we wanted to make sure that all of those things were moving like in a good shape and with good pacing.
Tell me the Mark Adamo story that you were about to tell me.
Oh, so at the very, very beginning stages, one of the first things that we do, or that ALT taught us, is we put a treatment together. The librettist puts a treatment together, basically outlining what each scene what's gonna happen in each scene. And there was actually the opera is very male heavy. There are a lot of men in it. There are 5 male principals and 2 female principals. And one of the female principals is Alan Turing's fiance for a while. Her name is Joan Clark. They were co-workers in Hut 8. They were best friends and they were engaged. And one of the scenes that David really wanted to put in was a breakup scene between Alan and Joan. And I was like, I don't think so. I don't think who cares? Who cares? Because we all know he's gay and we need to be on the side of the person who is being broken up with. And we are coming into the opera knowing he's gay. She just seems kind of foolish. And then we brought it to Mark Adamo, brilliant Mark Adamo. And he looked at it and that scene, he said, this is a really, really interesting scene because this is how so many of us survived, is by going into a marriage. So that was a method of survival, and that really spoke to my soul. It was so moving to even thinking about it now. So it's such a heartbreaking moment for both of them. And instead of just being heartbreaking for Joan because she was rejected, but it was more about, for me, Mark helped me realize the depth of the moment.
Well, we have just a few minutes left, and I would love to talk about Chicago Opera, this particular Chicago Opera Theater world premiere. Lydia Jankowska has been our guest on Opera Box Score before, and now that she's been in Chicago for a few years, I feel like Chicago is so lucky that we got her just as her star was ascending, and I don't know how we're keeping her around.
Yeah. Oh, I feel the same way. I first met her in 2015, and the first time I met her, we went into this rehearsal together, and I think the chorus had been rehearsing, but it was like kind of spotty and not everyone was there all the time. And it was really hard to tell that they had been working for some time. And then she just started working with them. And I felt like she was a sorceress. She just got them sounding so amazing by the end of the rehearsal. It really blew my mind how well she just understands singers and can run a rehearsal. And I've been working with her for so long. I have to keep reminding myself that not every conductor is this brilliant genius who understands my every musical internal thought. Like she'll be talking to the singers. No, this is where Alan feels uncomfortable, or this is where Alan feels like he's just really deep in his love of numbers right now. And I did not write, this is where he's comfortable, this is where he's uncomfortable. I mean, not in words, but in my music, and she just feels it so naturally. And I have to be grateful. I have to remember to be grateful because I can't forget how special it is that she is that connected to my music. So I'm very, very, I'm so glad that she's also part of COT because she helped bring me to COT. I'm having such an amazing time.
And the star of the show, Jonathan Mickey, was also the same baritone who sang in the workshop that I saw a few years ago. Wow. I mean, I also feel like he gets your music really well. Oh
my God. Yeah. So he was like a huge surprise to us actually, because he lives in Leipzig. He's doing a fest there, or he's been doing a fest there for many, many years. And we actually chose so this was for the 2000, I think our second workshop, the workshop that we worked with Lydia first on. We had auditioned singers. We chose one singer, but he was like in the contract, he was still at school and they wouldn't let him out. And so then his agent kind of just floated the opera around, and then Jonathan Mickey saw it and he said he wanted to lobby for it. And then I looked at his website and the things that are most important to me is that singers can act really well and their diction is good. And I couldn't really tell that from what I saw on his the clip that I saw. But I was like, okay, and then he came and he was phenomenal. I totally wouldn't have been able to predict that. But this is like, I think, auditions I think are very imperfect because all you know is that one performance, that one time. You don't know how they take feedback. You don't know how they will morph, with whatever. And it was really, we are so fortunate that Jonathan Mickey was there from such an early stage and that he has continued to be part of it. And I think, he doesn't complain. I have to say he doesn't complain, but he's in every scene. I don't know how it feels. I'm not a singer. And I'm sure he will never ever tell me if it is difficult, but he makes it look really easy. And he is a phenomenal actor, deeply, deeply intelligent. And again, so super courageous because it's a very awkward character we're putting on stage. I think all of us, we relate to that awkwardness, but not every singer has the courage to go up there and do it. And I'm just so grateful that he's willing to go there for us.
Well, the life and death of Alan Turing tackles so many topics, and I'm confident is going to enter into the repertoire based on what I remember from a few years ago. I cannot wait to see it in its world premiere later this month. Justine Chen, thank you so much for being a guest on Opera Box Score.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you to Chicago Opera Theater for giving me access to Justine Chen. The Life and Deaths of Alan Turing opens on March 23rd at Chicago Opera Theater.
Yeah, you got something to say? Then yeah, all right, you can say something. This is listener mailbag.
Quick little listener mailbag. Amy in New York City says, "Oh, thank heavens that we were not the only ones who hated the Mets production of The Hours. As long as I am here, Lohengrin was just super, and such a thrill that Christine Gerke responded to my tweets during intermission. Thanks, Amy. That's quite a listener mail grab bag."
I think hate was a strong word. I don't remember saying that I hated the production. I just thought that it was a mismatch. What's his name?
He just loathed it, He just hated it with every fiber of his being.
Just created a show that was visually very busy when the story was very intimate. I think it needed more quiet moments, visually quiet moments. I really loved Kelly O'Connor. Is that her name? Yeah.
Kelly O'Hara.
Kelly O'Hara. Oh my gosh.
I'm glad you were paying attention.
I love Kelly O'Hara.
Jeez, dude.
I actually enjoyed the music quite a bit, so I wouldn't say I hated it. But yeah, I had problems with the production. And I think it's great that Christine Gerke is, thrilling to you. I think that role of Ortrud is like a great scene stealer, for the rest of the cast.
She said it was thrilling that Christine Gerke was responding to Amy's tweets.
Oh, yes. Well, Christine Gerke is...
And honestly, Amy, we should just hire you to take over Opera Box Score's Twitter page from me because you're getting that engagement and I am not. So you're doing great, Amy. Thank you so much for your listener mailbag submission.
Chalk Talk on Opera Box Score.
So the news came out last week that Apple is launching a new standalone app for classical music dubbed Apple Music Classical. The app will have over 5 million classical tracks.
Whoa.
Everything from new releases to celebrated masterpieces. And the search functionality is supposed to be quite good with the ability to search by composer, conductor, and catalog number to find specific recordings. We have more details about how this app is going to work, but I'll just start by saying I want to talk about this because I think the hardest thing about streaming classical music right now is just the so much data or so much text that is affiliated with each track. Like you get yourself your Marriage of Figaro, and it's a 4-act opera. And you'll find on Spotify that at first it says Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. So you already have used up 30 characters right there.
Right.
And then Le Nozze di Figaro, okay. then Act 1, then scene whatever.
Then the K number.
Yeah. And then you finally get to the track that you're looking for, Devyeni non tardar, that's even before you get the artist listing. And who knows how it's going to be arranged. They might even put the artist before they might put him like in the same line as Mozart. It's like, you've got your Mozart, you've got your Kerry Takano, you've got your George Solti, but what am I listening to, So, I'm
Poor
curious
Oliver.
to see. It's really frustrating. I'm curious to see how this is going to do. Adagio is another streaming service that I think is failure to launch, but it's existing now. But I've heard that Adagio is a much better platform than Spotify.
Okay, so Weston, you're the tech head here. How does this platform work exactly? What's the functionality of it that is so unusual and that is going to make Oliver happy?
There's a few things. I mean, what Oliver was saying is true. Obviously, the search is I think the big thing here. I would also add, in addition to the arranging, the spelling is huge too. If you've ever tried to listen to anything by a Russian composer, you've got like 50 different spellings of Tchaikovsky. You know what I mean?
Spell Dvorak with all the correct diacritics.
The amount of times I've had to like copy and paste individual Cyrillic letters in order to find an obscure Alfred Schnittke piece, it happens a lot to me specifically. So I hope this solves my problem. But so basically the reason Apple is doing this is because they acquired a platform called PrimePhonic. And from what I understand, they are building the search functions and how PrimePhonic is put together into their previously existing Apple Music framework. And they're also using their clout as Apple to, I believe, bring in some heavy hitters from the classical music world. I think there was a post on Instagram of the Met talking about this announcement, and the way they phrased it sounded like they had an exclusive deal with Apple to get some of their operas streaming on there. Okay. I will say a lot of this is kind of, guesswork. We don't have the app yet. We have the specs for PrimePhonic. One of the cool things that PrimePhonic does or did, which I hope Apple carries forward, is in how they actually pay the artists who make the music. Because of the way classical music works versus the typical streaming pop music song, for example. You might have like a 3-minute pop song that plays through and the artist gets 10 cents or whatever. Right. That's actually way too high. But they get 10 cents for one stream, right? Whereas say you have an older like Beethoven recording, which is the entire symphony, like Symphony Number 9, like it's like an hour and something. If it's on one track, that artist would get 10 cents, right? So what PrimePhonic did, and what I hope Apple is incorporating into it, is changing the pay based on the amount of time you listen, not the number of plays. So that means that the pay is hopefully more equitable to the amount to classical music compositions that aren't necessarily built for the 3-minute pop music track length. That's pretty interesting. Apple Music also is very proud of their sort of proprietary response to like Dolby audio and stuff like that, with their spatial audio, which is really just kind of a fancy way of saying that they have like managed to like fine tune all the frequencies in their AirPods in order to make it sound to have a lot more a more impression of space and directionality with your headphones that you're listening on, which is something that they've been really trying to push recently with a lot of their pop music as well as classical music, which could be really interesting. And the music app for Apple has also been trying some new things recently too, like giving you the ability to like cut out vocals and stuff like that. I don't know if that's going to be something with the classical app.
So without the segment becoming an ad for Apple, Weston, is this something you're going to use?
That's a good question. And I've been thinking about this a lot because this is not the first time something like this has been attempted. I think it's no secret that classical music has always been very neglected since the CD era. Once things made the jump to non-physical formats, classical music has always been kind of the last afterthought of a lot of these major companies. I think because Apple is so huge, there might actually be like a really big opportunity for them to corner the market. But that brings with them brings with it all the pitfalls of, streaming music. There's my big concern, I mentioned this before, is that, ever since we've left the physical formats behind, you have that problem of, this large company can just decide one day that, no, you can't listen to this piece of music anymore,
Right.
especially
Right.
a problem.
Yeah, that's what a monopoly
You want it to be
idea.
competitive is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, no, not even that, but like think about like if an artist says something controversial, or like people hear about Wagner and they cancel him again, Apple could just pull that, and instead of having your albums to listen to, physically, you have it's all under the control of Apple, which can be a bit of a concern for a lot of people. I mean, that's the only reason the CD industry is still around, is because of classical music, honestly.
Right, yeah.
And as we know, there was just news this past week that vinyl sales have actually outstripped CDs for the first time since 1987. So maybe now is the time. Maybe now is the time to jump in. And if you do want to have a classical music streaming service, there are so many ways that people listen to classical music that is different from the way that people listen to more commercially viable music. And I think that I'm certainly interested to see what they come up with. It feels a little dystopian sometimes, and the little hipster part of me is like, doesn't want to do it. But at the same time, I think it is an important step forward to introduce people to it. I will say this is going to be available at an extra price tag over what you're already paying for Apple Music, which I think is a problem for newer audiences.
No. It's part of Apple. It's Apple Music. It's $1 more than Spotify, but it is still part of your Apple Music subscription. So.
But you better fact check that, man. Hey, look, music should not be free. Can we all agree on that?
I think it should be free, but that's a different conversation.
Well, okay, so clearly we're going to have to disagree about that. And needless to say, this is only on the Apple operating system, by the way. It's not on Android, presumably.
Yes. Not yet. And you were right, Oliver. It is the same.
There we go. That's the kind of fact checking I like on this show.
Yeah,
hey, look.
it's $10.99 a month for individual. If you're a student, you get a discount. If you're a family, you can bundle it, but it's basically $10.99 a person. So.
Okay. Well, thanks for the paid promotion for Apple Music Classical. Look, send us a voice
I did use the word dystopian a couple of times. So
email us your hot takes. Let us know if this is something that you're going to be using and what you think of it. operaboxscore@gmail.com. You're going to get all the OBS merch. Right now, you're going to get the 2-minute drill.
This just in. The 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
Lyric Opera of Chicago has announced 6 canonical operas, 1 Requiem, and an evening with Audra McDonald as its 2023-24 season. Details after the drill.
Washington National Opera has also announced its lineup for the 23-24 season. It includes a world premiere by Janine Tesori, which will be a star vehicle for Emily D'Angelo, Romeo and Juliet with friend of the show Duke Kim, Songbird, an adaptation of Offenbach's La Péricole, and Francesca Zambello's production of Turandot.
The BBC has announced that it will cut 20% of salaried jobs in the station's orchestras. The first casualty of the move is the BBC Singers, the UK's only full-time choir, which won't even receive a send-off at the upcoming proms when it is disbanded. Chief Content Officer Charlotte Moore said the decision was difficult, but called the overall strategy for the organization ambitious and good for the sector and the audiences that love classical music.
Silvia Colasanti will become the first woman composer to have an opera produced at La Scala. Her opera for young audiences called Anna A is about Anna Akhmatova, the Russian poet persecuted by the Stalinist regime, premiering in 2025.
During a brief ceremony after a performance of Thomas's Amelie at the Paris Opera, Lisette Oropeza was awarded the Chevalier de l'Ordre des Arts et des Lettres by the French Minister of Culture. Oropeza has always had a special relationship with the house, where she made her debut as Constanza in Abduction from the Seraglio in 2015, and has regularly returned in roles like Gilda, Adina, Rosina, and Marguerite de Valois in Les Huguenots.
Wow, he stuck the landing. Baritone Justin Austin has been named this year's Marian Anderson Vocal Award winner. Prior recipients include friend of the show Frederick Ballantyne, friend of the show Will Liverman, friend of the show Solomon Howard, friend of the show Ryan Speedo Green, friend of the show Lawrence Brownlee, friend of the show Janai Brugger. And we want to be friends of the show Denise Graves, Eric Owens, Janae Bridges, and John Holliday.
We'll get them eventually.
Yes.
Two tenors are joint winners of the Thomas Kvasthoff's Das Lied competition. Taekwon Yoon of South Korea is currently an ensemble member at Bonn Opera. British tenor Lawrence Kilsby has been sweeping the competition circuit with wins at Wigmore Hall and the Chesty competition at Innsbruck. Both young artists take away a cash prize of €12,500 each.
In trade news, director and administrator Onofrio Cutaya has been appointed to manage Maggio Musicale Fiorentino, filling in for Alexander Pereira, who is being investigated for credit card fraud.
British conductor Daniel Harding has been named the music director of the orchestra and chorus of the Accademia Nazionale di Santa Cecilia. He'll take over from Antonio Papano next fall.
Exit stage right, British conductor Kenneth Montgomery has died at the age of 79. Montgomery served as the music director of the Glyndebourne Touring Opera in 1975 and 76, and was a frequent guest conductor at Santa Fe Opera, briefly becoming its interim music director in 2007. Montgomery was also the director of Dutch Radio Choir and director of opera studies at The Hague.
And on this day, March 13th, 5 notable premieres: George Friedrich Handel's oratorio Joseph and His Brethren in 1744, Luigi Cherubini's Medea in 1797, Gaetano Donizetti's Ugo, Conte di Parigi, which was actually premiered in Milan, not Parigi, in 1832. In 1861, the Paris version of Wagner's Tannhäuser. And in 1998, Little Women with libretto and music by Marco D'Amo, premiering at Houston Opera. In 1894, Bruno Walter made his conducting debut at Cologne. We have some birthdays now. In 1813, tenor Carlo Guasco, who was teacher of Giovanni de Negri, who created a number of Verdi tenor roles. In 1860, Hugo Wolf, known mostly to singers as a composer of art song. In 1883, pianist and operetta composer Enrico Toselli was born. In 1913, the Swiss tenor of Italian descent Libero De Lucca was born. In we don't know what, mezzo-soprano Rosalind Elias was born in Massachusetts. In 1932, baritone William Murray was born in Schenectady. And happy birthday to Puerto Rican soprano Julia McGuinness, who was born this day, March 13th, in 1949.
And that is your 2-minute drill.
Just a little bit of Julia McGuinness singing the Seguidilla from Carmen in a film that used to be the kind of the prototype, or the the archetype? What do you call the urtext? It was the film opera of Carmen, with none other than Ruggero Raimondi as Escamillo and Faith Esham as Micaela, and some tenor singing Don Jose. I remember seeing this film in, I guess, high school, college, and thinking like, opera is so cool.
And it is.
Yeah.
Opera is cool. Lyric Opera of Chicago thinks opera is cool. We should start with the lyric announcement now. Matt Cummings pointed out the number of productions that Lyric had done this current season and compared that to what is coming up. So just to kind of put this in context, the 22-23 season, Lyric offered 5 canonical operas, 2 world premieres, 1 musical with a big M and 1 musical with a little m. But how does that break down, guys, in terms of what's on offer next season?
Well, I'll just say that they, with their new music director Enrique Mazzola, they seem to be trying to do this complete Verdi thing. And we've had Hernani, we've had what was the one before his first year?
Attila?
Oh, no, Macbeth. And then Attila during the COVID year. So we're finally getting one. We'll talk about in a minute. We're getting Aida, which is a Verdi opera that people want to see. But this year we had Hernani and Don Carlos. We had two Verdi operas, one that people want to see. We also had a bel canto opera, Le Comptoria. I think that Mazzola also is a big bel canto guy.
Yeah.
We had Fiddler on the Roof, which was the Barry Kosky production, which was scheduled in the main season, like actually opening up the main season right next to Hernani.
Right.
Hansel and Gretel started the calendar year, and then Factotum followed shortly after that, which actually took place at a different venue than Civic Opera House. Right now we are in the middle of Carmen, and we'll talk about that in my bad call later on.
Oh, boy.
And
goodness.
Proximity, a triptych of new operas, is coming very soon. So in the new season, we get Flying Dutchman with Tamara Wilson as Senta in the Christopher Alden production.
Yes.
George, anything do you want to say about Christopher Alden?
I mean, he's part of the twins, right? Christopher and David Alden. Always forget who's who. This is going to be great production. For me, I just love that overture. I could listen to this overture on repeat using Apple Music Classical.
Okay, so we have another bel canto show, Daughter of the Regiment, which is in the Lauren Pelli production, which Nathalie Dessay and Juan Diego Flores made famous in HD. That will feature friend of the show Lawrence Brownlee and Chevalier de les Ordres des Arts et des Lettres, Lizette Oropesa as Marie, yes. And Speranza Scapucci, a conductor who's not a white dude. Great. I think the most exciting thing coming, well, one of the most exciting things coming next year is Janufa. We haven't had a Janacek opera in a minute. And it's going to be Chicago audience's first chance to hear Lisa Davidson, who people are saying is like a one in a million voice. A sound that we have not heard probably at Lyric Opera in a long time. A true Wagnerian soprano with, tone that just cuts over every orchestra. And as Kostelnica in Janufa, Nina Stemme, another great Wagnerian soprano. And this production will be directed by Klaus Gut. Anything you want to say about Klaus Gut?
Well, this is the one to see, right? For me, this is the attraction. First of all, this is a very loud cast, right? It's like Nina Stemme, more like Nina Stimme. I cannot wait to see the Klaus Gut production. Of course, he just won the Oper Award from Oper Mag in Dortmund that we talked about on the show last week. So smart, so intelligent, stripped down, intense. Cannot wait.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll do a good job.
Gosh.
Go away.
Just surrounded by them.
So bad.
So then we have a very old Cenerentola production by Ponell, but will give us a chance to hear somebody I saw over the summer at Santa Fe who I thought was fantastic, Jack Swanson as Don Ramiro, and the new It Girl, I've not heard her sing yet, Vasilisa Berzhanskaya as Cinderella. And then we get Champion. So the Terrence Blanchard show is coming to Chicago shortly after it was at the Met, just like Fire Shut Up in My Bones. Maybe that's the new pattern. If the Met does it, we do it the next year. I don't know. But that's going to feature Marian Anderson Award winner Justin Austin as the young Emile and as the elder Emile, Eric Owens. Is that right? Yeah, Emile Griffith.
I believe so, yeah.
And also in the cast is Whitney Morrison, a singer I'm a big fan of. That's going to be conducted by Enrique Mazzola. So let's see how he does with new operas. We talked about the Aida, which is the Zambello production, starring Michelle Bradley, Russell Thomas, and Jamie Barton as Amneris, which is really cool.
The downside of the Aida, this is the production where the scenic design was done by a street artist who goes by the handle Retina. Just dig up the production photos. I did not find this a visually exciting landscape, and it certainly bore absolutely no resemblance to anything that happens in that story.
Mozart Requiem is part of their season. I guess they're doing it twice. Two concerts of Mozart Requiem.
Yeah.
Which I don't understand why.
I mean, I think it's like copying the Met. They're like, oh, they're doing Verdi's Requiem. We could do a Requiem. Let's see what we have in this closet over here. And they pulled it out. I don't think it's a good house to do Mozart's Requiem in. You know, I don't know if they're going to do it on the main stage or not.
And it's also not the type of show you need like amazing soloists. Like you can get away with doing it with like the young artists with the Ryan Opera Center kids, you know. Maybe that's why they're doing it, to save some money. I don't know, but it's not theatrical. It's beautiful, but it's a concert. It's not. I mean, Verdi Requiem is operatic, you know. The Mozart Requiem is much more like dignified. And
well, it doesn't have to be a concert, right? Like there, obviously, a director could stage this in an exciting and inspiring way, but that's not the choice that they made. I just don't know why they wouldn't leave this to the Chicago Symphony and the Chicago Symphony Chorus to crank out.
Yeah.
And then an evening with opera star, Tony Award winning, triple threat, quadruple threat, whatever you want to call her, Audra McDonald. I mean, I have nothing against Audra McDonald, but you're going to use your one special concert event to showcase Audra McDonald. Why not showcase Lisa Davidson? Why not showcase, somebody else who like opera audiences really want to see?
Yeah, it's an interesting choice. I mean, I feel like, she'll get an audience. I don't know. It's not the audience they would normally try to get with their, special guest concert that they usually do. So I don't know. I feel like a lot of it feels like money-driven decisions. I will say I'm excited about a lot of the season, but the less operas, the unstaged Requiem, it feels like they are very conscious of money right now, which I don't necessarily blame them for, but I don't know.
When you look at this season, it's like an NFL team that finishes the year with a 5-12 record, right? So like you've had 5 wins, and there's probably like a big win in there. For me, that would be the Klaus Gut Jennifer is the big win. But overall, you're 5-12. You were way below 500 on this season, in my opinion.
So a couple quick hits on Washington. There's a new opera being done by Janine Tesori, which is great. We love that. It'll star Emily D'Angelo. It's about a female F-16 fighter pilot who becomes pregnant and then is relegated to a trailer in Vegas to fly drones. That'll be interesting. There's going to be some LED screen technology for that one, immersive, new media.
I would hope so, because that sounds very static to me on a stage. That sounds really exciting if you're like in real life in a plane, and super static. Maybe that's the point.
Great cast for Romeo and Juliet. Friend of the show, Du Kim as Romeo and Rosa Faola as Juliet, with Justin Austin. I forget what role the baritone sings, but there's a baritone in there somewhere. Another Janine Tesori opera, the revival of the children's opera The Lion, the Unicorn, and Me, which will feature Solomon Howard as the lion. Justin Austin, we mentioned before, will be singing the Marian Anderson Vocal Award concert. The American Opera Initiative is doing a triptych of new works by Laura Joban Acosta, Elizabeth Gartman, Joy Redmond, with librettist Sam Norman, Jose Rodriguez, and Melissa Tian. They're adapting Offenbach's La Pericole and calling it Songbird. I think it's going to have like a jazz accordion or something like that. I'm quite sure how that's going to work out, but sure. And then Turandot with Christopher Tin and Susan Soon-Hae Stanton. I don't know how Christopher Tin and Susan Soon-Hae Stanton, what they have to do with Turandot. Christopher Tin, I thought, was a composer. Oh, a new ending. It's a new ending. I see. Okay.
It's a new ending.
I was confused.
Just to go back to Grounded, which I was mocking it earlier, and that was Bush League. I apologize. There's no reason to mock this show. I do want to see the massive LED screen technology. I note that the presenting sponsor of this production is General Dynamics, which is a well-known private defense contractor. And this is perhaps one of the strangest tie-ins of
That's DC, baby.
Corporate support and thematic material. End of play.
Anyway, I'm gonna go check it out because I'm a big Emily D'Angelo fan. So
Should be
look for
awesome.
me. Look for me in DC in October.
Last call, boys, on the drill.
I think that I agree with the BBC conductors when they say irresistible and catastrophically damaging. The UK is just having a time right now in terms of classical music. Let me tell you what.
Okay, they've been having a time for about 5 years. Ever since Brexit. Don't get me started, Weston. Ever since Brexit, it's all downhill.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of outrage about them just discontinuing BBC Singers, a very important organization in the musical landscape, and not even giving them a chance to finish out, what is ostensibly the finale of the season, the Proms concert. So it's rude, and I'm sure we can get other rage about this from other people. If you'd like to submit your rage, we'll be happy to read your rage letters.
That is beautifully put. I can imagine all my English friends and relatives saying this is very rude and inwardly being like irate about it, but outwardly just saying like, well, it's quite rude, isn't it?
Very stiff upper lip.
Let's wrap up the show.
Good call. Bad call. On Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. Oliver Camacho, take it away.
So I went to the Prima of Carmen, and shout out to the cast, which is 3/4 of the principals are people of color. I mean, we got Janae Bridges, obviously, as Carmen, Golda Schultz as Micaela, our friend of the show, Charles Castronovo as Don Jose, and I think most people don't know that he's a stealth Ecuadorian. There was a Russian as whatchamacallit, as Escamilla, so you get one whitey in there. But when you start to incorporate all the Remendados and Don Caires and Fresquitas and Mercedes, you bring the number back up again. So I was really happy about that aspect of the show. And Micaela's aria, Jeudi, basically stops the show. It was so good. But I have to say, gatekeepers are out there, folks. And I got very excited after Don Jose's aria, and I did my trademark, whooping, screaming, cheering, and somebody seated very near me said, "Calm down."
Oh,
you'll have to bleep that.
Bleep
Sorry,
that one.
Yeah, and it just was ironic because seated right next to me on my right were this young couple. Maybe they were in their late 30s or early 40s. I call them young. But it was clearly one of their first experiences in opera, and the woman was very well dressed, and she was getting drunk on the wine with the little cup, the sippy cups, and there was 2 intermissions, and so I think she had. I mean, I'm not shaming her. I think she had probably 5 glasses of wine while she was there, and she was getting chatty, and she was pulling out her phone. She was doing all the things you're not supposed to do, and asking her, companion what's going on and who is that, and I just wanted to be gracious and not shush her. Somebody did eventually shush her, but I wanted her to feel you spent your money, this is your evening, you're trying to have a good time, I'm not gonna whatever make you feel bad. And here I'm the one that's getting told to
careful, man, that's a slippery slope.
Calm the F down.
Jeez.
Anyway, so my bad call is you people going out there to the opera, you're ruining it for other people.
Weston Williams.
That reminds me of a past bad call where I was at the Teatro Andovin seeing a production of Fidelio, and I had a little bit of a cold, and I sniffed a couple of times, and then this Austrian lady, without looking back at me, pulled a single tissue out of her purse and sharply put it behind her head so I could take it and blow my nose. That's just a little PTSD for you. I have a little call for Matt here. This is a story in the New York Times about the ending of Phantom of the Opera on Broadway. It's been going for over 13,000 shows, and it makes the point that for the musicians in the pit, this is for some the only gig they've had to have for years and years, which I think is so interesting. What a wild, specific career just to see it ending like that. And Honestly, though, I don't really envy them because as a sometimes musician myself, I don't think I could do the same show 13,000 times in a row. But it's a fascinating little read. I'm sure we'll put it up on our website somewhere. Check it out.
Bad call, daylight savings. I am still struggling. I cannot get myself onto this new time. This is just ridiculous. Good call, the national tour of the Diane Paulus production of 1776. This is not a great musical as it's written. This production is utterly brilliant. It's performed by a female or trans or non-binary cast, so there are no men on stage at all. It's done in absolute period costume from 1776, and none of the text is changed. This is the brilliance of Diane Paulus's directing. There is nothing on that stage that I probably couldn't find in the scene shop at my local university. But the way that this show is crafted and expressed moves you to tears. Run, don't walk. I will say, talking to Frank Luzzi, pal of mine, also the vice president of marketing, communications, and digital strategy at Opera Philadelphia, he said, hey, look, if your show has 30 consecutive minutes of dialogue, you're not allowed to call it a musical. That is a statement of fact. Agree completely. And that's it for this week's edition of America's Talk radio show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Send us a voice memo. Email us your hot takes. operaboxscore@gmail.com. Find links to stuff we've talked about at our website, operaboxscore.com. And hey, that's also where you're going to put your money where our mouths are. You can give back to the OBS through the donate page. Your announcer is Norm Waddell. Your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho, and your audio editor is Weston Williams. For our guest, Justine Chen, I'm George Cedarquist, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as your arts council makes irreversible, catastrophically damaging decisions. We're back with an all-new show next week, plus you get more headlines, more hot takes, and more opera set in trailers in Las Vegas. Join us.